Very pleased to welcome two of our members up to speak today. We've got Brian Cruz, who is the founder of Sergeant Clean Car Wash with locations throughout Northeast Ohio. He has over a decade of entrepreneurial experience. He has a passion for business, a love for people, and an infectious attitude. Brian, did you write this yourself?
No, my wife.
His eagerness to help others succeed. That has allowed him and his team to blossom. Brian, a Marine Corps veteran of 8 years, has a business management degree from Kent State University. Brian serves his community through Strongsville Rotary, various chambers, Strongsville School District, Strongsville Connections programs, and is a past and current board member of several nonprofits. Mr. Greco has attended Patio High School and Kent State. He was a Strongsville firefighter and retired as a lieutenant paramedic in 2013. He's been an insurance agent for 31 years. He has done 24 years of humanitarian trips to Honduras, El Salvador, Gulfport, Mississippi, New York City for 9/11, and now Poland. Please help me in welcoming our members.
Good morning. Dzień dobry, as they say in Poland. Dziękuję is thank you. Jak się masz? How you doing? Yeah. I taught Brian here. It's a nice travel. Yeah, that's what I do. I'm going to start things off with the how and why, and then I'm going to transfer over to Brian, who will give us the where and when and what all we did, and then we'll open it up to some questions. But before I do that, I love show and tell. So I brought some things. These are from the Rotary clubs in Poland. It was Holy Week, and they had some special cookies, and they have Rotary stuff on them. They're really cool. Okay, so I'm just going to pass them around. Don't break these. Don't bite them. They're mine to keep. Okay, so take a look at them. Pass them around. That's what the Rotary clubs in Poland kind of do. The other thing I'll do is, this is the Rotary banner they gave us. Brian and myself each got one. This is Rotary Club of Krakow, Poland. Okay, so it's really kind of cool. And, wait, there's more. As a special added bonus, with the table drawing, everybody take out a special ticket. And so whoever has the winning ticket will win a candy bar directly from Poland, okay? So, yeah. Me and Brian were in the store, we cleaned them out the one day.
You don't get much for $1,700 out.
yeah. So this will be for the winner of the winning ticket tonight. So, we'll get started, but one thing I want to say about this trip, it was fantastic. Every day I looked at Brian, and what a great travel partner this guy is. But for him, this was a memory trip for someplace he had never been before. And by that I mean every day he would say, "Oh my God, this reminds me of my grandma. Oh, reminds me of what they would say. Oh, this food," whether it was food, music, or something. And I just didn't say a word. I just looked at Brian and said, "Oh my God, this is great." It's a memory trip for someplace he had never been, and it was just kind of cool. And it's amazing because you got to go all this way, 10-hour trip to find out that we both had the same parole officer. All right, so how did we end up there? Well, as Ashley told you, I've been kind of doing this kind of stuff for 24 years. And watching the news, it was just tugging at my heart. I want to go, I want to see, I want to do, I want to participate. And so I kind of quietly mentioned it to Manjeet, who said, "Well, let's get this going, and let's tell Dan Crix, and let's tell some other people, and then let's pass the hat." And that's kind of how it unfolded. And then the next part of that is, they said, "Oh, you can bring the check." So now I had to find people to accept the checks and the money, which at that time was, $2,000, and the foundation was going to match, so we had $4,000. We ended up with $66,000.
Yeah. Plus, Jamie, are you still here? So Jamie took it upon himself with him and his friends at the Kentucky Derby they had to get together, and they're donating half of the 50-50 to us for another $600. So.
And the VFW gave us $5,000. The commander was here. Thank you. You know, I had a bunch of bucket list items where to go in Poland that I personally wanted to visit, like Auschwitz, which we did, Birkenau, the Schindler Factory, a few other religious sites. And I said, but I'm afraid I was to go to Poland because nobody says go to Poland. It's like, come to Paris, come to London, come to Madrid, go to Barcelona. You see all these ads, and I never saw anything. So I was like, well, what if I hate it? That was not the case. This was like a little hidden gem. It's fantastic. It's affordable. It's clean, friendly. You can't believe it. So where to go? We flew into Warsaw was our plan. First it was going to be somewhere else, but we ended up in Warsaw. We drove to Częstochowa and then Krakow. Brian will explain all that. But thanks to Rick Voigt, who suggested and gave me a tip on the Rotary Club of Częstochowa, which was one of my bucket list items because there's a religious site there, Jasna Gora, and I wanted to see that. So it's like, okay, what are they doing? They are doing a phenomenal job. I just got another email this morning on what they're doing. With our money and everybody's money, they're buying more surgical equipment to send into Ukraine for hospitals that have been destroyed and other things. We actually did a FaceTime call with a doctor near Mariupol in a town and telling me what medical supplies they need because everything has been destroyed. This guy is like right in where they're shelling and bombing. So that was our itinerary. That's how we got there. We vetted 2 Rotary clubs and then another club, the Corporate Aid for Ukraine, which is an American businessman of Polish descent. And he's been there for 30 years. He has a very successful business, and they are using 100% of the money. There is like virtually no administrative cost. Everything is going through. We survived. The biggest risk was our cholesterol spike from the punchkis, which were absolutely phenomenal. But without further ado, now the star of our show.
Are you the opener and I'm the headliner? Oh, good. Thank you for the promotion. No, your applause is not needed, but always welcome. You can keep going. All right. So, as Pat said, kind of like our mission as we broke everything down. And Pat and I know there are so many divine things that happen in the world, and you just can't explain things and how everything goes around. In that bottom right-hand corner, I'm a hockey coach. And there's 2 boys that are both adopted from South Korea that I coach, and they each wrote me a letter every single morning for 7 letters for the days that we were there. I thought it was really nice, and some of them are quite comical, but it was good. That story will reappear here later on. But as Pat mentioned, what was our mission? What are we going to do when we go over there? That was the first question we asked when we said, we're going to go over there. So basically, here's the rundown list. The fellowship, was Częstochowa, Krakow. Boots on the ground, vetting these organizations and vetting the experience of what's going on with the Ukrainians. Distributing all of our medical supplies. You saw that. That was our arrival baggage there on the far right with all of our checked luggage, and no one was there to help us, right, Pat? They just looked at it, they were like, can we get some help? And they're like, yeah, and then they never helped us. Distributing the medical supplies, which you've done on multiple times, you'll see the photos. Meeting and discussing with the volunteers and the refugees, spending time with them in Warsaw, Krakow, Goodwill, and then obviously we did some touring of Poland. So here's the journey. It started in Warsaw to, I'm going to pronounce these names wrong, even though I am Polish. Jasna, Częstochowa, Krakow, Auschwitz, Birkenbach, and then Wadowice, where Pope John Paul II was born, raised, and became holy. Polish roads. That was the fun part that we had to navigate. You guys can see from all the roads. This is the name of the road. So our GPS and our map was it was quite comical. I'll see if there's a video here. No, here. John? Hold on. Oh boy, hold on. You gotta hear it, it's hilarious. We heard this 58
Take
times.
the first exit onto Karpiton and Mieczysława Medweckiego.
Yep, that's what I thought.
Take the first exit onto Karpiton and Mieczysława Medweckiego.
And Pat goes, that's what I thought. Okay, so that was navigating Polish roads. So our first stop was in Warsaw. On the top left, our Polish translator and driver for the day was Olaf, and he comically said that his name only became famous due to the movie Frozen. And then, as holy as Pat and I are, on Sunday we went to, what church is this?
The Shrine Church of St. Faustina, where the Divine Mercy Chaplet was envisioned and apparition was. And we got there on Palm Sunday, and we got to listen to the Polish women's choir through the Stations of the Cross, which was like phenomenal.
Yeah, it was a really good experience at the Stations of the Cross. Were nice. Even though everything was in Polish, we understood what was going on. On the bottom left, we were at one of the two remaining walls, the ghetto walls in Warsaw. Next to that is a Chopin, who's a famous composer, and that was actually destroyed. And then they rebuilt that, remade that, and Chopin was actually, I think he passed away, he died in France, but he had his heart shipped to Poland because his heart always belongs to Poland. So some interesting things. Pat is also a man of the creatures. He's feeding a squirrel, which is, just, Pat loves all animals, everything. And then on the top right, that was just a memorial, quite a bit of memorials, as you saw from the movie Schindler's List. A lot of the way that they would move around the cities in Warsaw to escape the Germans was through the sewers. So it's just showing that they're entering the sewers, and there's a priest on the far right, and then different servicemen and women, and then just common, citizens in Poland. On the bottom right, Olaf is showing us a lot of the architecture inside the city, and you see he's pointing it out. The photo that he's showing there is actually after the Nazis destroyed it, and then you see that little arch above the doorway there. That was what was kept, and everything else was remade. So this is many buildings that we got to see when we were there. And then here we are in Warsaw. So on the bottom right, you'll see there's a gate, there's guards. I didn't see any weapons, but they're there to ensure that the individuals that are coming in are Ukrainian citizens, and then they can come in. To the right was the World Center central kitchen, where they got food and different supplies that they needed. To the right, in the upper right-hand corner, was where they actually kind of first checked in. One thing that we come to realize when the Ukrainians arrived, they were motivated to have a plan and to keep moving. Okay, they weren't stagnant. At times, Pat and I were almost embarrassed because if this was America, there'd be pushing, there'd be fighting, he got one SIM card, I want this SIM card, he got a yellow cell phone, I want a yellow cell phone. There was none of that. These people were orderly, they were disciplined, all the volunteers were orderly and disciplined, and it was really a shocker. I don't know if you wanted to mention anything about that.
Yeah, it was so well organized. It was remarkable, and it was an awe to see how well the Polish government was handling all the refugees, and that there were no lines, and everybody was polite, friendly. They really did a good job. And the one thing we could not do was take pictures of any of the refugees. So, it's kind of like a HIPAA law. It's just out of respect and of the people coming in, who some had literally nothing. They had to give them clothing, bags, showers. Others had some things and were moving on to other countries. But I think right now, Poland has 2.5 million refugees in Poland. And you couldn't tell at these stations.
And I guess if you guys got any questions as we're showing these slides, or something you could, let us know. Instead of going all the way back, you guys we're here for an hour and a half, right? Yeah, till 10. Okay, good. And there's a test. We're gonna spring it on them. So here's more of the photos. So the middle one there with the map is the one that's in red. There is Warsaw. So it's showing that when the Ukrainians come in, it's basically helping them figure out the cities in Poland that you can go to, because Warsaw, Krakow, Częstochowa, they're just overwhelmed by the number of refugees inside these bus and train depots. So it's to help them say, hey, here's the game plan. Please move out. Please disperse. Go to these other areas. And when they check into Warsaw, just like they did in Krakow, they get this little wristband, and it's marked with the date. That is to see how long they've been there, to keep them motivated to say, hey, it's time that you start looking and calling contacts, and they're wanting to do those things. When by the time we got to Krakow, a lot of the refugees, we were going to go to the border. It was rainy, so they were kind of saying, I wouldn't go because it's pouring down rain. Number two, a lot of the refugees are actually coming back into Ukraine, as coming in, and there's more volunteers there than there are actual refugees crossing the border. So one of the things that we realized when we were there is we see the news, we see all the hostage crisis and all these things. They're actually they're just great individuals that are in a really, really, really tough spot, and there's more going back than they're actually coming in, and we don't see that on the news. So we were able to kind of understand that then. Yes?
I have a question. I mean, sure, in the upper right-hand corner,
Yes.
what is Pat doing to that voluntarily?
We actually cropped him in. He wasn't even in the photo. He's smiling from a different photo. But as you can see here on the left, these are how these refugees are coming in. They don't travel in Ukraine, right? Like we Americans, we have it so good, we get to go on vacations and things. They don't get to travel. So these individuals are traveling 10, 16, 20 hours walking in with luggage that was never really built in the first place to travel. So by the time they get there, their luggage is falling apart. They don't have anything that they need. They're throwing away their luggage and their bags that they used to carry. These are some of the volunteers that we had. Pat had a good time talking to the firemen in the bottom right-hand corner. There's a medical station, so it's, like I said, real organized when you come in. If they need medical attention, they're able to administer it. Some funnies. We woke up one day on the far left, and a window cleaner. So we open up the windows, and boom, there's a guy right there. Second part is, this is when Pat's, I think the 438th time I pissed him off, where he's trying to clean the windows, and he's holding a hot dog and a coffee and trying to clean as I'm jacking around with them. And then he got me back by telling the people that I can play the harp for breakfast, amongst others. And then here, Pat can talk about it.
Okay, so this is in the town of Czestochowa, and the thing was we were communicating with the Rotary Club of Czestochowa, letting them know that we had money to bring them. And I said one of the things I wanted to do was stop and see the icon of the Black Madonna, which is another religious site. And they said, no problem. He said, we know people. We will give you a behind-the-scenes tour of this monastery so that you can see this special thing. And they had, about 6, 7 guys waiting for us and gave us a walking tour. It was probably a couple hours at least of everything. And we got to see that church, organ music. That's the church on the upper far right. In the lower middle, that's our guide, who spent a lot of time in explaining. And then on the far right, that's Brian and myself in front of Pope John Paul's car, who's it's in the museum. So there's a lot to see and do in that area that we got to see. And that's the basilica in the upper right-hand corner. Those are the Rotarians, just some of them from Czestochowa. Then they took us to dinner. And Brian will tell you how I threw him under the bus at the Krakow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a Czestochowa.
Was it? It's
Yeah,
just
I wanted to kill you.
Okay.
So on the bottom left is a minefield. So they showed us how they went down in, how the Polish people tried to provide natural resources, and they come to find out the majority of the natural resources just didn't exist. There was a lot of, I don't know specifically, but it just wasn't good nutrients as you would look at maybe like Alaska with coal and natural resources and oil. Is it going to happen? On the bottom right, the gentleman with his hands in his pocket, he had, correct me if I'm wrong, Pat, he had cancer. And he had visited several religious institutions and met Pope John Paul II, was touched by Pope John Paul II. Cancer completely gone. Dedicated he had a very wealthy businessman, stopped what he was doing, retired, and dedicated his whole entire life to Pope John Paul II. So we got to visit. This was his coin and medals museum. The whole entire building, what was it, like 4,000 square feet?
Oh, yeah.
Just completely dedicated to Pope John Paul II. Yeah.
On display.
Just, it was incredible.
Wow.
So, and because of that, this is the holy text message. So we were with Pablo, who is in the Czestochowa Rotary group. I thought I took a lot of photos. He took probably 5,000 photos and sent us this thing. So he was taking photos of everything. So I was like looking at the next photo and candy that Pope John Paul II there. So that's the holy text message. So you guys are welcome. You can all touch my phone later. So Jasna Gora. So this was fun. We were in the wrong parking lot meeting the Czestochowa Rotary, and they have the little on the bottom right there So what they do for parking, it's whatever God's will is for you to give for your parking spot. So it's just kind of a donation. So Pat is, we have no idea where the heck we're going. No one in this area speaks any English. So Pat's translating with a guy who knows 5 words in English on his phone to the guy who's supposed to be working this booth. So as you can see, Pat and I took it upon ourselves to work the booth for him during this time period. And then we met Linda Plain's sister in the top right. Linda, this lady does not look like you, but she reminded me of you. Spoke 0 English words. We were trying to figure out where I'm going. This lady thought we had no idea. She gave me 10 zawadi. She bought Pat and I ice cream. And then she left, and then she came back and she got us some rosary cards. She left, and then she came back and got us postcards for Yasmin Gora. We're like, oh my gosh. So we finally got rid of Linda. And then we figured out where we were. It was funny. We didn't take a photo of him. Who walked by? Jay Zarilla.
We kept seeing people that reminded us of Rotarians, and I'm standing there next to Brian, and we're waiting in this parking lot, and I go, Jay Zarilla?
He was just like...
And this guy was a clone, and then we found another guy, Jim Carbone.
Yeah.
We have Neil Klabundi that we met over there, and I forget who else. But yeah, you'll see the likenesses, and we're just, we're just 2 knuckleheads having a hoot of a time.
Yeah, it was good. So, Czestochowa. In the top left, we talked about the Ukrainian doctor that we FaceTimed. So they have a direct relation. The gentleman, let's see, on the top left photo on the far right, his name's George. He's a very wealthy Polish businessman who owns a winery, tons of acreage, a castle. We will see this later. Vineyards, bed and breakfast, just a very, very well-to-do man who has a huge heart. Okay, so he brought in several Ukrainians. The one on the bottom right, bottom area there is Alina, and she and her 68-year-old grandma walked 16 hours to safety into Poland. And George basically kicked everybody out of his bed and breakfast, and the Ukrainians are staying there. And he's putting them to work, and he's helping them out wherever they can. She had made us something upon our arrival on the far left. And then the 2 areas here where we're passing out medical supplies, that was the guy next to Pat. He owns a logistics company. So they do a lot of trade in and out of Ukraine regularly. So I think the next day or the day after, all those medical supplies were directly in the hands of Ukrainians. It was just amazing. That would never happen if we just said, hey, here we go, we're going to put this in, and then cross our fingers and hope it gets there. So it was a great opportunity. You can talk about the...
The one on the top right is the embarrassment part.
Oh yeah, is that the video? Okay, so what he was saying about George, he's the guy in the upper right-hand picture sitting down, the guy with the big heart. And of course we were all overserved that evening, especially George. And he was excited to see us, and he wanted to take us for a ride in his American Jeep through his vineyards, through his land, through his farm, through his fields. Oh my God, and then Brian and myself were in this car. Just picture yourself driving like on a golf course on wet grass, and there's a big lake, and we're headed right for this lake.
Coffee.
Yeah.
For dinner, we have coffee in our hands.
And we're in this Jeep, and we're bouncing around, and he's like, American Jeep, yes, I like this. And I'm like, so do you actually know Ted Kennedy? As Brian's in the back going, oh my God, he's laughing, and he's smacking my head. But we just find every second we made fun and laugh. And we actually pulled over in the lower center picture. We took that picture. It's just lit up with lights. It was actually at night, and that was just stunning, the view. The center picture, that's George, the AKA Ted Kennedy, Chappaquiddick, in the middle. And on the far right upper, that gentleman there with the bald head, that's Wojtek. He's the president of the Czestochowa Club. He just texted me or emailed me this morning and said they're using all their money now to buy more surgical equipment for hospitals in Ukraine. what we liked about them was the Chesterhoven Club was collecting the supplies, money, and they were buying supplies, and they had like armed military guys bringing all the supplies in. Where the Krakow Club was more or less doing humanitarian aid to the Ukrainians that were in Poland, but now they're going to do something else, maybe buy an ambulance. Oh, okay. So we were at dinner, and again, we were overserved, and so we're eating and eating, and we've already had all day with this club. Okay, I mean, probably about 4 or 5 hours, and their meetings are 7 o'clock in the evening at a really nice restaurant. So we're sitting there eating, and then I said, "Oh, folks, did you know that Brian is a famous singer?" Well, they all started clapping and wanted to hear Brian sing, so I kind of threw him under the bus. And he had a whole mouth of food. I thought I was going to have to do the Heimlich maneuver. He was bright red. I started crying. I was laughing so hard because they wouldn't stop. They loved this guy, you know. And they just wanted to hear him sing. And he said, no. Yeah, it was one of those impromptu moments. And, you know, I said it so seriously, and then I just kind of said quietly, like, oh, yeah.
Well, and then they thought I was embarrassed because I just didn't want to sing. And then they kept going. I mean, like, the whole restaurant stopped talking to listen to me not sing. So we're going to skip. This is George's missile silo bunker.
It's like a bunker.
Special place.
So he's showing us all this. We're done. We have another hour-and-a-half trip. And he's showing us his little area there. He's got a little wounded foot.
Is this in his basement
Dino.
or something?
This is at his house. He's got all this acreage. Yeah, so I'm telling him, I'm like, we're done. We love the hospitality. We're all finished. Thank you. We love you. And he just ignores everything we say, and he just keeps going on and on. So so Krakow, I'll just, we're running a little bit out of time, but Punchki's on the left. We had about 800 of them. And this is the city center. Pat and I were dubbed Polacks. And then this is the Krakow Rotary group, and you can see it there in the bottom right, Gunnar. They have Sergeant in Arms there, the guy's counting all the money. Somehow I was attracted to anyone with white hair and old men were very much attracted to me because they all clinged and wanted to sit next to me. I had no idea why. There's another white-haired gentleman. So one of the divine things that happened here is the Krakow, and Paul, who's their Rotary president in the middle here, the top right photo, he's addressing and kind of retelling the story with him and his wife. Of all things crazy, so Pat and I said, hey, we're going to go. Pat's reaching out on the logistics side to figure out where we're headed. They just got done with their fundraiser. They wanted to raise $25,000 for like a tactical vehicle, tactical van, tactical ambulance to donate to the Ukrainians. Well, they came up short. 2 days later, Paul gets an email from, as he puts it, to American Pat and American Brian, Rotary. They say, I send $12,500, now we get an ambulance. Just crazy. Just, one of many things that happen like this. And then another stop in the evening here. This is a husband and wife. They've been married about a year. And they're bringing these trauma gear that was donated from...
The Madonna Association actually made these, and then they dropped them off at my house. But that's the organization on Broadway Road in Parma. And those are...
tactical trauma kits for the military or rescue people, and they have special clotting gauzes that, like we carry on the ambulance, that you just can't buy at Drug Mart or Rite Aid, and some other heavy trauma equipment. So that was a priority. We had to move some items that we had planned to accommodate those items. And I think we had about 25, 30 of those trauma kits that we brought, and as well as Manny Garcia donated at least a dozen or 15 walking casts, and we brought those. I mean, it was amazing. I had 3 70-pound check bags to bring over, and Brian had 2, and so I mean, we lived out of one carry-on bag and a backpack, and all the check luggage was at least $10,000 worth of supplies that we physically brought.
So this is at Krakow. On the far left is the bus and train depot. Behind there is the train station. The bus depot is to the left. So this long building, that was an old repurposed building. On the far left and then upstairs, that's where the refugees would actually come in and check in. On the far right are the tents that we saw at Warsaw for the food and the different supplies. When I talk about the South Korean kids that I help and coach, in the bottom right, Pat and I, again, lost for the 848th time. We're trying to explain, we're trying to look for the center and everything, and here's this of anybody, a South Korean kid that walks up, speaks perfect Polish, English, Korean, gets us exactly where we needed to go. So another one of those just weird things. I'm talking about my Eli and Sam from Korea. So when the refugees come in, they have a center where they're kind of processed. So on the top right, you can see these are open beds, closed beds, and it's a very formal process of how they're checked in, if they have to go to medical center or where their bags are, and how they get where they're at. Once again, we weren't allowed to take photos, but Pat was passing out chocolates. And a lot of this was just really just goodwill, and as we dubbed from the first slide, just making human connections. Pat and I spent a lot of time just holding on to people's hands and just listening to them, and we don't speak Ukrainian and we don't speak Polish, but just being present. And even with the kids, Danny on the bottom left made me a little 3-year-old. So his mom has an 11-month-old, they have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, all walked 12 hours to safety in the Poland with a stroller. And she spoke better English, trying to explain how she attached the trolley, which is luggage, as they call, onto this and walked in 12 hours with a 3-year-old, 6-year-old, 11-month-old. Crazy. I know we know this, but we have no idea how good we have it. Not even a clue. This is some photos of the refugee center. As I talked about earlier in the top right, that's all the stuff that they threw away, where the bags or whatever supplies they used to get to Poland just were ripped and torn, so they had to throw away. But they had everything there. This is inside the train station. All the kids are, making different artwork. And this is a Ukrainian who came about 2 or 3 weeks in before the war. And he has a job, and then every day he's not working, he's here at the train center helping. Real quick, see that grocery cart? So when they come in at the bus and train depot, it's a public area. So all their Ukrainian money is worthless. No one's going to trade it. No one's going to take it in. So they have to get a shower, which they have to pay for, and they have to go to the bathroom, which they have to pay for, which we experienced that several times. We didn't have exact money. But they kind of put their supplies in this cart and go into the stall with them so no one steals it. It's just incredibly sad to see. There's one of the volunteers that's actually resting and sleeping. There's another gentleman that we met along the way to help. Some of the funnies here, we had to have a formal degree to make coffee. And then on the bottom there, you can see this is in the bathrooms. This is just normal, don't do this, but definitely you can do this. And it's
The one on the lower left is Pivo's beer, vodka, and then wine.
Auschwitz-Birkenbach, another crazy, I know we're running out of time here, but we got to see all of that, and it's just, if you've not gone, you need to go. They kept telling us that there's people in the world that don't believe that actually happened, that none of this actually exists. So we got to see that. The Schindler Factory. Wadowice. So that was when we actually FaceTimed you on the left there. We took a photo. Pat is a very good parker, as you can see here. And we were in a legal spot too. And then on the far right, this poor guy's last name. Can everyone see it? Okay, that's good. Okay. From the Rotary friends we met along the way, Linda Plain on the right, and then Carbone, Neil Clemente. Neil, you're there. You're Neil in the middle. And then I think there's George Campo on the left. And then, long story short, mission accomplished. So all the supplies, you'll see in the bottom right, whatever money that were donated to the Rotary groups over there, they actually made a sticker and then they sent it. So when it came to Ukraine, they know where the supplies directly came from. And the video that's being played right now are the soldiers kind of explaining that, I don't know if they're actual soldiers, but militia that are explaining that they got the goods, they're taking us in, and they're thanking us, for what we did. So, all right, that was long-winded and 2 minutes left for questions, but thank you.
when you showed the map of the different cities where they could go to, how were they getting there to those different cities?
It's all
Yeah.
It's provided free for them. That was one question I asked at the refugee center. And it doesn't matter, like, there was a woman that says, oh, her mother lives in Spain, and this other person has family in Italy. They were getting there for free.
By a train, bus?
Yeah, trains, bus, however, it's all provided. That Polish government knows what they're doing. And logistics, George?
Now, Pat, did you try and make use of these cell phone translators where you speak into them?
Yes, we stayed we were really roughing it, where we stayed at the Intercontinental in Warsaw, and then a Marriott in Krakow. And they all spoke English, except for like the cleaning people and something. So yeah, I would talk into the phone, and then I would show it and hit play, and they go, oh yeah, you need more towels. Okay.
There's even a cool app. If we saw something in Polish on a piece of paper, something we could take a photo of it, and it'll translate it in English, looking at the same menu.
What was the most impressive thing you saw or encountered during the whole trip? Besides that,
Yeah, well, that was my first answer as a Pat. I mean, for me, I think it's just the, I think that is the most humbling part of this is that, these people are just, they have nothing. They're coming with whatever that they have, and then they're just there in this vulnerable point of their life saying, we didn't ask for this. And they have no husband there with them. The males that were at these refugee centers were elderly or they were hurt and they're completely displaced. And to me, it was seeing their courage and their camaraderie with other Ukrainians to make ends meet, and having the Polish citizens and the volunteers help them get what they need. And like I said, there was no pushing, no shoving, no arguing. It was whatever they received, they were good with, and then they moved on. It's just incredible, at least for me.
And one thing I kind of connected was when we went to Auschwitz, Birkenau, and the Schindler factory was, this happened recently, 70 years ago, and now it's identical. It's happening again. And to see that pain and suffering, again, it's disturbingly interesting, it just wrenches at your heart, and it's just like, wow, how can this be happening? And it's still going on today. Rick Voigt?
So these poor people are coming out of the Ukraine with the Ukrainian dollars, which you said are absolutely worthless in Poland. What do they do to get money to take a shower?
The donations, they have money, and so like the one guy we were talking to, he says, oh yeah, this person needs a shower, so we actually pay for it, because it's in the bus station, so they have to go outside of the area where they're at. It's still inside, it's like a giant mall, their bus station, and then they go over, and then they can give them clothes and items.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with, just like anywhere, there are some, gypsies, and there are some Ukrainians that are in Poland with dual citizenship that come to get handouts, so it's really, really far and few between, but that's a lot of, they just take care of it, whether it's American money or, Polish zloty, that they just provide the showers or whatever that they need. Any other, Linda?
You collected $66,000 from us to take over there. Now, did that include some of the costs for the medical supplies, and then there was extra cash left over? Did you give them actual cash, and you give it to them in a check, and they disperse it, or how did you do that?
Yeah, so all the medical supplies that we brought over were pure donations. You saw Chief Trades up there, and Pat did a really good job reaching out to hospitals and Strongsville Fire Department, and then the fire department then reached out to their suppliers, and the suppliers were like, heck yeah. One of the ladies drove right from Toledo, I think that day, right, and brought the whole van and said, Chief and the other lieutenant that's there, take whatever you want for them. So all those medical supplies don't count towards the 66. The 66,000, Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, went to the Ukrainian relief and then the 2 Rotary groups, and they're buying those medical supplies directly at cost through their contacts there. So 100% of the money that we made goes 100% to those goods.
Real quick, we only gave them half of the money initially. Then when we arrived there, we met with these clubs to make sure that this was really gonna get used and not just kind of, the money gone for something. And we were so impressed by what they were doing, we came back and we said yes. And big thanks to John Turnbull and Kip and for going through its painstaking to get the money, but they wire it electronically. We didn't bring any cash other than with us. So the money was wired directly to their Rotary clubs, and so we didn't have to touch any money.
And they were so detailed too to receive the money that they both of these Rotary groups had like printouts of what they bought, so just to kind of validate what we were doing. Once again, like Pat said, we were able to disperse some money, and when we get there, vetted these and said, wow, yeah, these are really good organizations with the ambulance and then the other medical supplies. So.